Okay, so let us revisit what has happened in the 1980s. In the 1980s, well, in 1979, the Shah gets kicked out of Iran, and Ayatollah Khomeini comes in as the and begins a religious theocracy. Whether it's a dictatorship or not is up to you. In Iran, and the United States sides with Saddam, and there's a war between Iran and Iraq. Okay, boom. In 1990, there's a ceasefire finally between Iraq and Iran, mostly because there's just no more war. There's just no more money to run these wars. They're broke. Iran is broke. Iraq is broke. And Saddam, particularly, has war debts. Well, they both have war debts, right? And now it's a real problem because you can't afford to go to war and fight a war and at the expense of everything else. And this is what I was talking about in the peace lectures, right? What happens when you go to war? It's like, well, it costs a lot of money. And what that means is that Iran, and this is going to be very important for us now, Iran is broke. They don't have money anymore. They've got to sell their oil as cheaply as they can just to make anything. And Saddam is in the same situation, except that Saddam has the support of the West. So that's a little different. But Saddam still would like to get more oil because he wants to sell more oil because he's broke. He's got these war debts. He's gone into debt, and he hasn't won anything, right? And neither has Iran, which I suppose is a good thing. It's a good thing that neither country won. I mean, everybody came away. It was a draw, and it was a disaster for everybody, you know. And okay, so Saddam has other issues that he's going to deal with, but these are the ones. This is the one that's clearest for us. And so Saddam then looks at Kuwait and he says, "We like your oil fields." And so give us better terms on our war debt because we would like to, have the use of your oil fields. And he'd been borrowing from Kuwait to fight Iran. And he had also charged. Okay, so he has been borrowing money from Kuwait, and Kuwait says, no, we're not giving you better terms. You need to pay us back. We loaned you money. You need to pay us. So then Saddam says, all right, you've been slant drilling into our oil fields. Now, slant drilling, I better put a slide of this up, but it's pretty simple, really. If you have a border like this, and you've got the two countries on top of it, so here's, on this side is Iraq, and on this side is Kuwait, and you start drilling across in a slantwise fashion into somebody else's oil field, that's slant drilling, right? So it's illegal. You're stealing somebody else's oil. That was the claim, right? So Saddam says, "Oh, you're slant drilling into our oil fields, you lousy Kuwaitis, underneath the Iraq-Kuwait border." And the Kuwaitis are like, "What are you talking? No, we're not doing that." Okay, well, it's contested. We don't know. We still don't know. And you have to go into the history, basically, of Iraq and Kuwait to go and see what actually happened and who do you believe. And, okay. So Saddam then let the United States know about these threats and said, basically, we're letting Kuwait know that we're not happy with the fact that it's been slant drilling our oil fields and so on. And the United States didn't say anything. There were no warnings from the United States. The United States was like, well, and the person who was in charge of the United States at that point, well, in charge, I see that nominally, the president of the United States was George Herbert Walker Bush. So President 43, and President 43 was going to be the father of President 45, right? So George Herbert Walker Bush, 2 terms of Clinton, George W. Bush for 2 terms, right? So there's this direct dynasty. And then Jeb Bush is going to run for president and, ironically, not get in, which, I was shocked. Well, we were all shocked. But I was just surprised because I thought, these Texans are going to, they're just going to... Anyway, that didn't happen. So what happens is Saddam lets the United States know, I'm warning Kuwait. And for whatever reason, the United States does not say to Saddam, that's not a good idea. Now, why they didn't do that, they had 4 days. My memory is that they had 4 days to say, Don't be threatening Kuwait. We're not happy about that. But Saddam gets no word from the United States. So he's like, okay, well, if they're not against it, they're probably for it. Or they're not going to go after me anyway. So he invades Kuwait, right? It's easy. It's August. It's late summer, you know. It's the end of July, beginning of August. And within a few days, Saddam takes over the whole country because he's paid for a military, after all. I mean, that's what he's been buying. He hasn't been buying anything else. He's been buying weapons and soldiers. You know, he's been training his soldiers and, you know, keeping up his military. So they roll over Kuwait. And the emir of Kuwait flees. He's like, I'm out of here. You know, forget this. And within a month, he officially annexes Kuwait as a state of Iraq. So he takes this last little piece right down near the Gulf, right down here on the Gulf. Okay, well, on August the 2nd, the UN passes a resolution, 660, which says, we're not fond of this invasion, and please withdraw your troops, Saddam. And Saddam was like, whatever, you know, I'm not doing it. I didn't hear from my friends in the United States, and so, you know, like, make me move. Well, the United States is like, okay, yeah, we'll have a little war. And this is something which I believe, and many of us who look at the history, and political scientists and historians and of all different. So here I'm making an appeal to authority, right? People say, you know, yeah. People say that the United States has a reason for going to war. My own particular conclusion, after looking at all of this material for some time, I guess at least 10 years or so, 12, whatever, a long time, is that Bush the first basically wants to ensure two things. One, that he exercises the military to reinforce Reagan's legacy, and two, to be reelected, because it's midterm elections. They're coming up. They're coming up to the presidential election. It's 1991, and that basically is in the last year before the election. It's considered to be election year. So 1991 is election year before the election in 1992. So essentially, you kind of most politicians are always campaigning, but especially in the last year of a presidency, the president basically begins to campaign. And just about everything a president does in the last year of a presidency is considered, unless they're in their second term, is considered to be campaigning. And in this case, Bush was coming to the end of his first term, and he wanted to be reelected. He ran for reelection, and he lost. He lost to Clinton. So he's going to go to war in Iraq to make his base happy. And the base is like, yeah, you know, go fight and give us a victory, for Christ's sakes. We're tired of losing. And so the United States immediately sends thousands of soldiers and all kinds of materiel to Saudi Arabia in what is going to come to be called Operation Desert Shield. And the first Gulf War, then, as we know it, divides into three parts: Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and the aftermath. And so I'll put that slide up for us now. Okay. All right.